think this is the microphone here. Kevin.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. We've got the Canadian Pensions Plan Group here from Toronto. They're going to talk about the pension plan offering. So I won't, I'm Kevin Kirkpatrick, in case we haven't met. I'm the physician recruiter for Peterborough. And we will, I'm sorry, I just noticed it's like typing, transcripting. So I'm actually going to introduce Dr. Vu Tran to start, and then I'll let him introduce his team as well.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We have guests here and we have guests online. And so my name is Vuket Tran. I'm a family doctor. I also do Emerge, and I do long-term care in Toronto and in Richmond Hill. I'm the president of the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan, which we'll explain in just a few minutes. In the meantime, let me introduce our team. So I've got Mr. JP Laporte, who's going to come and say a few words. Mr. Laporte is a pension lawyer. Maybe he'll introduce himself better afterwards. So he's a pension lawyer, but he's also the treasurer of the CPPP. And then we've got Mr. Luis Oliveira, who's the COO of the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan. And we have online as well our pension facilitator, Mr. Lloyd Mitchell. So let me start by, which slide do I advance? This one or that one? This one here. Okay. Okay. Does that advance here too?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. So why are we here? Why are we here today? We're here today because we're talking about a brand new pension plan for Canadian doctors. And I'm sure you guys know doctors don't have pensions. And so what is the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan is exactly that. It is the first pension plan of its kind for Canadian doctors in Canada. So it's not just Ontario, it's across the board in Canada. And the reason why this is for the longest time, so I've been in practice for about 23 years now. And when I first started, I'm like, is there a pension plan for doctors? And every time the answer was no, there's no pension plan for doctors. There's a pension plan for nurses, for teachers, as you guys know. There's a pension plan for, municipal workers, paramedics, police, firemen. But for doctors, there's no such thing because we're self-employed. And we, in Ontario, well, we built OHIP. So our payer is OHIP, but we don't have an employer per se. And so it has always kind of intrigued me as to why doctors in this healthcare system don't have a pension plan. And I've been looking for one for 23 years, maybe 22, because I started the pension plan a year ago. And so this has come from me trying to search for something that will give me a pension. Now, the question people will ask me, well, why a pension? Why not the RSP? We'll see later why the RSP is not a good retirement plan for our community and our professionals. We'll explain that in a minute. So these are the people and the partners that we work with. So the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan was launched in January 2022. So we're 10 months old. We'll explain the structure, we'll explain how it works, what's the philosophy behind the pension plan. But as we develop this pension plan, we say, well, we have to work with people that are in the finance industry that people recognize and feel that they have confidence in. So the partners that we partnered up with is Fidelity Investment. Fidelity Clearing is our custodian. So the money that is put into this plan is not managed by me, and it's not managed by Mr. Laporte. We don't touch the money. We do the administration, but all that money is held by a custodian, which is Fidelity Clearing. Very reputable name. The partners, the financial partners, come on in. the financial partners that are investing the money, investing the funds is CI Financial, which is the biggest mutual fund company in Canada. Also, we have another partner called Vector Global, and Vector Global is a smaller boutique type of portfolio manager. And what they do is they specialize in equities, but also in private equity, which is non-correlated to the market assets. Our actuaries are Industrial Alliance. Integris Wealth Pension Management is Mr. JP Laporte's company. We'll talk about that. And then there is us. So we work with people who are best in class with credibility. And this is where we want to start the pension plan. So why a pension? We'll explain to you in a minute that the pension provides the highest level of creditor protection in Canada. But a pension is really there to provide a safe, reliable, and structured plan for your retirement. But it's not just there for your retirement. It is there for your entire professional life. And we'll explain how that works, how that supports you in a tax planning perspective, your entire career and not just a retirement. And the CPPP is approved and regulated by the federal government of Canada, provinces, and territory. And this plan is compliant with CRA. So this is not one of those things that come out of the blue that someone invented. These are things that are fully compliant and registered with the CRA. So I'm going to stop here. I'll come back and answer some questions afterwards. I'm going to introduce JP. JP, you maybe say a little word about yourself, and then we'll go on with the slide, and we'll talk about the structure and how it works.
Yep. So I'm a pension lawyer. I've been practicing for about 20 years in Toronto and big Bay Street firms. And my clients were multi-billion-dollar pension plans, you know, that are very familiar, like the teachers, GM, and so forth. Those were the people that I would service. And about 11, 12 years ago, I came to the realization that unfortunately in the small private sector where physicians are operating, because you don't have 100 employees, you're the only employee typically, if you're incorporated, of your own medical corporation. If you're not incorporated yet, that's a different discussion. But that would be considered small business. So in the small business community, unfortunately, there are no pension providers that are out there providing true pensions. So it was a big market failure because civil servants have pensions, nurses have pensions, teachers have pensions, but doctors don't, dentists don't. That doesn't make any sense. So I figured that this would be a great opportunity to bring a level of sophistication that didn't exist until then, and this is why we started creating personalized pension plans for professionals. So we'll be talking about all that today. So how does a pension work? I mean, this is pension 101. Well, you need an employer and you need an employee. So often the medical professional corporation is the employer, and then you'll have the employee. This is the doctor that's the president of that corporation. And so the corporation sponsors, sets up the pension plan for the doctor. So that's how it works. It's quite simple. Contributions are made by the corporation into the pension plan, and that gives the corporation tax deductions. Just trying to move these slides a bit more. Oh, there we go. And then all this money inside the pension plan grows tax sheltered. It's kind of like an RSP. You put money in an RSP, the money grows inside the RSP, there's no tax. And then when it's time to pull it out, then you start withdrawing the monies to spend it. So the same thing happens with the pension plan, except that there are some extra tax planning opportunities. You can income split your pension with a spouse. So the couple ends up paying less tax. You can do that as early as age 40. You can't do that with an RSP. You have to be 65. So right away, we might have a 10-year, 15-year advantage over the RRSP when it comes to pulling the money out. So let's look at some of the top 10 highlights of the CPPP. The arrow's working as well? No. Okay, so it's by physicians, for physicians. Start by physician. We have an advisory board of physicians. The idea is to help the profession because we understand what the needs are. And that way we can optimize the solution to really get as much value as possible for those that are joining. It provides the largest tax deductions possible under the Income Tax Act over a lifetime. So this is probably the most important point, is that if you were to compare how much money one can save with the CPPP versus an RRSP, which is what 98% of people are doing. They're using the RRSP because that's all they know. You know, we have RRSP season. Everybody's pushing RRSP at the end of the year in January, February. But if you're using a pension plan instead of an RRSP, you can usually triple, sometimes quadruple the tax deductions that you can claim. So you significantly reduce how much tax you're paying all the time because you claim much larger tax deductions. And you can imagine what that does over long periods of time. It creates an immediate, absolute wealth effect in favor of our clients. And how does it do that? Well, the pension laws provide for 7 additional tax deductions that don't exist if you have an RRSP. 7. Most people never heard of them. So we're going to be talking about them tonight. And they also allow you to transfer, for those who eventually will have children or spouses, the ability to roll your pension money if you were to pass away unexpectedly. You can roll all that money tax-free to the next generation, to your spouse and your children. You can't do that. You can only roll to a spouse with an RRSP. You cannot roll to the children with an RRSP. There's a tax problem if you and your spouse pass away and you have an RRSP. It's called a deemed disposition. We have a way of transferring that wealth to the children with no tax. Could be millions of dollars of taxes saved thanks to this feature. Now, the obvious point is if you have much higher contribution limits, that means you're going to end up with more savings in retirement. You're going to have significantly more wealth to retire on, which means you might be able to retire sooner. You know, you may not want to be putting all these shifts when you're 60. You might say, you know, I'm pretty burnt out. Well, if you've got a lot more money in your CPPP than an RRSP, now you have the freedom to say, you know what, let's start taking some of that money out, and maybe I'll only take 1 shift when I feel like it. I'm not forced to keep working just to keep up with the expenses. Some more highlights. We have the ability to add some life insurance to the pension plan with tax deductible dollars. For those of you who already have life insurance, it's always paid with after-tax dollars. So first you have to pay the tax, and then what's left behind, you can use that as a premium to buy the insurance policy. Here, we have a way of using pre-tax money. So OHIP money that hasn't been taxed yet is used by the corporation for the pension plan, and then the pension plan can buy insurance. Well, you can buy a lot more insurance if you don't have to pay tax, right? The smarter way of doing it. It's a lot more flexible than other solutions, which you may or may not have come across, called individual pension plans or multi-employer pension plans. We won't get into that technical discussion tonight too much, unless people really want to. It provides a wider range of investment options than traditional RSPs, because these are pension plans. Now, we took the 407 highway partially to come from Toronto here. Well, guess who owns the 407 highway? It's a pension plan. If I go to the local branch in Peterborough and I say, hey, I want to open an RSP, and then they'll take my money and I say, oh, I'd like to buy some shares of the 407, they're going to laugh me out of the branch. So that's not something that's permissible. we'll sell you a mutual fund from the bank, but we're not going to allow you to invest in the 407 because it's not eligible for an RRSP, but it is eligible for pensions. So even the quality of the investment is significantly higher with us. We also got professional money management and very low investment fees because of economies of scale. We were able to negotiate extremely deep discounts on fees that you as a retail individual by yourself don't have the market power to do. So by being part of a group, all of a sudden you access these discounts and fees. And it's great for those who eventually will have a family because we can add children to the plan down the road if they're put on the payroll, if the medical corporation becomes a regular corporation, after you decide to stop practicing medicine, you can add children even before that if you can find a job for them. So now we can create a family strategy. It's not just an individualized physician-centered strategy. It could be for the family. So really, this Canadian Physicians Pension Plan is for you and your family. It's not for your patients or staff if you have staff. Because, we feel that it's time to care for yourself. It's great that so many physicians are devoted to their patients, but sometimes they need to look after themselves. And this is a solution that helps with that. Now, a lot of people in the finance industry ask questions about, well, okay, how does that stack up against what's already out there? So a lot of people know what a tax-free savings account is, a TFSA. The problem with the tax-free savings account is it has a low limit. Now, it was bumped up for 2023 to $6,500. That just came out 2 days ago, I think. It used to be $6,000, but what are you going to do with $6,000? Right? Even if you grow at 10% every year, you won't be able to do much. So while it's a nice to have, it's not efficient for retirement purposes. RSP has a much higher limit, but there's only one tax deduction with the RSP. It's the annual contribution. We have 7. IPP and multi-employer plans are in-between solutions, but they're not as tax effective. And then at the very top of the hierarchy is where we sit. So we decided, since we can craft this any way we want, why not just make it the best one from the get-go? So that was kind of the idea behind the planning. Now, looking at the room, probably these slides are not immediately that important, but over time, people do start families usually. Sometimes they get children. And, the problem is if you have an RRSP and you pass away with your spouse or you don't have a spouse at death, we have a problem. We have what's called a deemed disposition. It's a tax hit. So the government taxes everything that's in your RRSP as if you had sold everything the day before you died. It's called a deemed disposition, and then the government takes half. So what you thought you were giving to your children, and well, it's half. That's the problem. But the CPPP, because it uses pension legislation instead of RSP rules, allows us to pass that accumulated wealth over to the children that are part of the family plan. So either you pass it to your spouse on a tax-free basis, and if unfortunately something happens to the spouse, then it goes to the children on a tax-deferred basis. So this could be millions and millions of dollars that instead of going to the government, end up going to your children whenever you have children. So very, very powerful tax planning point. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it's probably the most powerful tax planning element of these pension plans that is virtually unknown. If you were to speak to your accountant, I could almost bet money that they would have no clue about any of this. Okay? Because they're not pension specialists. They don't see pension plans because all their clients are small businesses, and the small businesses don't offer pension plans. So they don't develop an expertise in this area. Now, we've talked about that. If, for example, if you have a $3 million in an RSP at death, right, you're going to lose $1.5 million in taxes. But if instead you had, $4 million or $3 million in the CPPP, then because the pension rules allow you to transfer that money as surplus to your children, there is no tax hike, no tax bite. So everything, the full $3 million, is now available for the children. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, that's a better use of my money than giving it to the government. Some people are patriotic. They prefer to give it to the government, but I prefer to give it to my children. So it's just a value judgment. Now, the problem with a lot of these things is that the biggest destroyer of wealth is taxation. If you lose half your money at death or along the way because you keep getting taxed, you're like a gerbil on a thing, you're working, and then all the money is being bled out of the system. So the beautiful thing about pensions is that it allows you to keep more of your money by claiming these tax deductions and redirecting that tax money into your own pocket, into the pension plan. Now, there are all kinds of other tax shelters out there. People can buy a nice home and then sell it, and then the capital gain is tax-free because it's a primary residence. You can do RSPs. You can do TFSAs. We talked about all this. You can do pensions. Of course, this is what we offer. You can buy whole life insurance, permanent life insurance. There are all kinds of solutions out there. But the stark reality is that if you look at the statistics, 98% of people in the private sector, when it comes to retirement plans, are using an RSP because that's all they know. That's all the bank branch pushes. That's all the people on TV and the radio talk about. They don't talk about pensions. When have you ever heard an ad for a pension plan? I've never heard one in my life. And I've been around for over half a century. Right? But there are disadvantages with the RSP because there's only one deduction. So it doesn't really help you if you are going to be a higher income earner because the limit is too small. What are you going to do with $30,000 a year deduction? Whoopie-doo. It's kind of like it's better than our TFSA, but it's not enough to build up capital so that when you decide not to work, you can live comfortably. So what then? If the RSP that everybody has isn't really doing what it's supposed to do, what then? Well, you probably figured out the answer is build your own pension plan. Use the law to your advantage. And so we built it for you. We know about some of these big multi-billion-dollar pension plans that I used to serve, like the Healthcare of Ontario pension plan for all the nurses, and I think the pathologists, that's right. The teachers, right? You've got OMERS for the municipal employees. And now we've got the CPPP for physicians across Canada. So we're very, very excited, very happy to be here. And this is groundbreaking. And I think once we're done with our presentation, you'll see that even if you don't sign up, you will have learned something very, very valuable. So I'm a lawyer, so I'm not going to bore you too much with the law, but the reason why the RSP is so inadequate is that it relies on Section 146 of the Income Tax Act. In that section, when you crack it, it only provides for that one annual contribution, that one deduction. Well, that's fine, but if you have a high income, you need more than one deduction. That's why the CPPP is based in Section 147.1 of the Income Tax Act, which is the same section that governs these other plans that we were looking at. HOOP, teachers, OMERS, they all use Section 147.1. That's what we use. And that gives us access to all of these tax deductions that you don't get with an RSP. So what is it? Well, the CPPP is really a collection of personal pension plans, PPPs. So it's a federation. We federate together. We pull together a whole bunch of individualized pensions that are usually designed for a single person, like one physician. You know, like Dr. Tran, you have two in your plan because
My plan is me, myself and my spouse.
yeah. So in this case, but usually if you're the only physician inside your corporation, it's a plan for one person. The employer is the corporation, the medical corporation. And you can start at any age, but it has to be before 71. Because the law doesn't allow you to join a pension plan when you're past 71. It's too late. So don't take 50 years or 30, 50 years, 40 years to do this. Start anytime. And like I said before, the PPP is a building block of the CPPP. So So what it does is that every single physician can now, if they want to, pool some of their assets in broader pools of money in order to generate economies of scale, to drive down the costs and have access to certain assets that you can't do with just an RRSP. Now, some of the features, all the contributions that are made by the medical corporation to the PPP or CPPP are tax deductible. All the expenses relating to the management. If you have an RRSP and I don't know, I'll pick on a bank, a CIBC, and you have an RRSP at CIBC and CIBC charges you 1.5% of all the assets inside of your RRSP. So let's say you have $1 million in the RRSP and they charge 1.5%. So $15,000 is the management fee that's charged. That $15,000 is not tax deductible to you because it's an RRSP. But under the pension plan, that same $15,000 is tax deductible to the medical corporation. Well, that makes a big difference over time. Like an RSP, everything that's contributed gross tax sheltered. But unlike an RSP, with these pensions, we're allowed to do top-up extra contributions that are also tax deductible if and only if the internal rate of return on our money is below 7.5%. So there's a rule in the Income Tax Act and the regulations that says in order for these pension plans to be fully funded, they should in theory grow at 7.5%. But if you don't achieve that, technically you're building up a deficit, and the government allows you to top up your pension plan with more deductions, more contributions, which you cannot do with an RSP. If you maxed out your annual RSP contribution and you don't earn a good rate of return, there's nothing you can do. But with a pension plan, you can. These are called special payments.
Can I just interject?
Sure, yeah, please.
So why we're talking about this? Why is it important? So all the contributions are tax deductible to the corporation, plus these top-up contributions, plus other contributions are taxable to your corporation. Why is that important? So imagine a corporation that makes less than 500. Anything less than 500, the corporation is taxed at 12.2%, right? So imagine, let's take the example of the 500. So someone makes 500 in a corporation and they contribute, let's say the contribution is 40,000. Well, they're not taxed on 500, they're taxed on 460, right? And so in addition to that, you now can get to do more top-ups. So now maybe another 20 grand of top-up. So instead of being taxed at 500, you're now all of a sudden being taxed at 440, etc. So you say, well, at 500, I just got a 60 grand reduction, it's not a big deal. But what if someone is making over the 500? They're now taxed at 26%. So imagine like we're all family doctors, we don't make $1 million. But you know, what about the GI and the cardiologists and all those ophthalmologists, right? They make $1 million, $1.5 million per year. So for them to get additional tax deduction is significant because they can all of a sudden go from above the 500 where they're taxed at 26.6%, now get all these tax deductions and now fall below the 500, depending on where they fall in that pay scale. Now, even for yourself and even for myself, I'm like, okay, Well, let's say I put 60,000 in my contribution, and my corporation gets a tax deduction of 60,000. Well, 12.6% of 60,000 is about $8,000, $7,000. I don't look at $7,000 as $7,000. I look at it as how many shifts does that represent, right? How many merge doc or in a family doc? And let's just say, just to round up the numbers math, easy math, because I can't do math at this time of the evening. Let's just say each shift is $1,000. Well, if I save $7,000 in my contribution this year, that's 7 shifts I don't have to do, right? Equivalent to 7 shifts. Well, each shift is eight hours. Well, that's 56 hours. Well, what can I do with 56 hours? All of a sudden I have 56 hours back to me, right? What can I do with that? I can spend it with my kids. I can spend it with my family. So these contributions that your corporations are able to take really is giving you back time. You think about money, but money is useless if you use the $7,000 and buy a Gucci bag. What's that? But if you use that $7,000 to buy back time, then that's value. This is why the pension is so powerful. Sorry.
No worries. This is always good to give me a chance to get a bit of water. So on top of these top-up contributions, we also have the ability to do past service contributions. So that's if your corporation has paid you a salary, let's say in 2021, but you only set up your plan in 2023, well, you could buy back the year 2021, the year 2022, and that's considered past service. So when we do that, what we're doing is we're increasing the size of the pension you're going to receive in retirement because we're factoring those 2 extra years. And to pay for that, the corporation writes a check to the pension plan. And that's what creates the corporate tax deduction. So it's a way of, instead of giving money to the government, it's to put into your own pocket, into your own pension plan. And the government allows for that because that's we're using their rules. Now, I've already mentioned the pension income splitting, which is a great tax benefit. So lots and lots and lots of advantages that come with, and we've already talked about being able to pass money to your children as well.
Can I also interject here
Sure.
as well? So just to give you an example of what this means, because that's a lot of things that you say, well, what does it mean? So I'll give you my example. So in an RSP, the contribution limit is 29,300. That's the number. That's the max. Doesn't matter if you make 2 million, it's still 29,300. Inside the pension, it's obviously not that much more, but in my case, so let's say 2021 was 29,300 in an RSP. In my case, in the pension was 37,000. So I got now all of a sudden $8,000 more that I can contribute, which means my corporation gets to write off an additional 8,000. And I'm able to do the past service contribution. I incorporated in 2012, but I only did my pension last year. That's when we started all this. So I got 10 years of past service buyback. And my past service buyback was 196. So I had 196,000 that my corporation can dump into the pension. My 37 that I dump into the pension, and my spouse was 30,000. So I dumped another 30,000. So in total, my corporation dumped almost 250. My corporation got
Better than 26,000.
better than 29,000, right?
Or 29,000.
So my corporation in 2021 got a tax write-off of about 250. Whereas if I did the RSP, it would have been 29,000. So that's where all these starts to add up. And when you think about it, 250,000 divided by 1,000, that's 250 shifts. 250 shifts multiplied that by 8 hours per shift. How many shifts did I avoid doing? And having all that time back was valuable. That's what this means.
Well, maybe we should make sure the Minister of Health doesn't hear this presentation.
It's too late. I said.
The other advantage is the accelerated funding. So yet another pension rule is what we call in pension jargon terminal funding. And that allows you, if you decide to turn on the pension, let's say, I don't know, at age 60 or 55, you still keep working, right? Because you're still a shareholder of your corporation. You're still able to get dividends. But you say, instead of taking a salary, I'm going to start taking a pension. By triggering the pension way before the normal age of 65, the laws allow us to do a catch-up accelerated contribution. That's called terminal funding. In terminal funding, I've seen it go as high as about $2 million. Imagine a $2 million write-off that you can claim just because you're in a pension plan. It's almost too good to be true. Like people are like, where are these rules? How come no one told me about this before, right? So, but it's been around since 1991 that these rules have been baked into the income tax. Like it's just nobody talks about them. Maybe because it's seen as too complicated. I don't know, but anyway, good stuff. So just a quick example, imagine a 47-year-old that wants to save until 65. These are based on true numbers. So we compare the RRSP and the CPPP. And you can see we've used the exact same rate of return. We've assumed that whether you're using an RRSP or the CPPP, the money manager is only able to return 5% a year, right? So we didn't pick a huge number. But you can see a gap developing over time because we're allowed to put more money under pension laws than under RSP rules. So the question is, well, how big is that gap? Well, by the time this fellow retires at 65, the accumulated wealth is, well, not quite $700,000 extra. So my question is, if you're going to be earning 5%, regardless of the type of account you're using, which curve do you want to be on, right?
So the 47, actually, that was my example, because I'm 48. And so we did it last year. So we used my age as the example. And I'm going to work till age 65. That's the example we chose. And let's say we put it in a balanced fund growing at 5%. Whether you purchase that balanced fund in an RSP or you choose that same balanced fund and you put it in pension, just that alone makes a difference of about 700,000. And this is just the one rule of the pension. We didn't even talk about the other 7 rules where you could add this and that. And this is just the regular one rule of, the 29,300 versus the 37,000. That was just that alone. And just that alone, we could put more money and accumulating at 5%. There's a huge gap already. And so if I say 700,000 over the span of my career, well, that's 70 shifts. Again, I look at it in terms of shifts. That's 70 shifts. 70 shifts times 8 hours, etc. So in the span of my career, if I'm saving that amount of hours, well, that's the amount of hours I can do whatever I want with it. Spend with my kids, spend with my spouse, go on vacation, learn a new hobby, go do missionary work, whatever it is that fancy the time that you have.
So we've talked a lot about pensions. What CPPP has also decided to do is not just restrict itself to using pension laws, we also decide to bring in an insurance law component because there are some great solutions in the insurance world that can work synergistically with the pension rules. So one of them is the ability to use whole life, permanent life insurance policy as an asset of the pension plan, right? So that way, whenever the insurance company pays their annual dividend, you've got a buildup of wealth that's virtually guaranteed by the insurance company. And then if you pass away, there's a death benefit on top that's paid on top of what you would have earned inside of your insurance contract. So we've got a double protection by utilizing life insurance as an asset class of the pension plan. And some people say, well, how guaranteed is it? Well, I don't know. Like Sun Life and Canada Life, I think they have been paying a dividend consistently every year for the past 120 years. Even through the world wars, they kept paying their dividend. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close to guarantee. So that's just to give you an example of what these insurance companies pay in terms of their interest rate versus what people, when they're using the stock market, as represented by the Toronto Stock Exchange Index. So you can see the comparison between what happened in different years, selected years, and what people using insurance earned instead.
So you can't buy life insurance inside your RSP. That's the major difference.
So I'm not sure if we should skip
No,
over
we
these
should
ones.
skip.
There's a lot of extra goodies. The only point I want to make is that when you have a life insurance policy, there are two components: is what's inside the policy and the death benefit that's extra. And that death benefit can be in the millions. So it's good to have both. And that's what we provide under the pension rules. The good thing is because it's paid from pre-tax money, from OHIP money, you get more. You can buy more insurance. So I'm going to skip over this. These slides are going to be available through Kevin, I think.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that. And we can always walk you through these.
And we can
Yeah,
do the
these.
explanation afterwards.
Yeah, normally we have our director of insurance that goes through these slides because it gets a little technical. So that's why we're skipping today, because we want to reserve some time for questions. But just think of this as an extra sophisticated asset within the pension plan that you can't do with an RSP. So
Yeah, it's the same.
yeah, we're just skipping over all the insurance slides. There are quite a few of them, but because it's so powerful, when we do a full-blown 2-hour or longer, we get into all the detail of how these work and why so many professionals sign up for them. So let's get to the pricing, because people usually mentally say, okay, good, check, but what's the catch? What's the price? How much do I have to pay for all this? This can't be free, right? So normally when you set up a pension plan in Canada, there's a setup fee. We waive those. So no setup fees. And then normally every year you have to pay an annual administration fee. What we've done with CPPP is we've said, let's cap that at 4 years. So after 4 years, there are no more annual fees. Okay, and how does it work? Well, we have a schedule. So by the end of the first year that you're with us, we reimburse 25% of the fee. So the fee is $2,800. It's tax deductible, so it's really less than that, but it's $2,800. But after the first year, we reimburse 25%. And then after the second year, we reimburse 50%. After the third year, we reimburse 3/4. And by the fourth year, the whole thing is reimbursed. So it becomes free in terms of annual fees. So that's how we structured it. And you're probably thinking, okay, well, how do they make that happen? So the portfolio managers that we talked about pay a referral fee when they receive assets, because they didn't have to chase those dollars. They came through CPPP. So we can take that referral fee to cover those expenses. So it doesn't have to come out of your pocket. So it's a way of using group buying power to cut down the costs for the individual end users. And in terms of getting started, well, what we always say is, you need facts, you need data. So start with a complementary illustration to figure out how that would work for you, whether it works for you or not, right? Because you want to know, first of all, you want to know how much you're able to contribute for the past if you had salaries in previous years. If you don't, how much on a go-forward basis from now until whatever age you decide to retire at. You want to be able to quantify these advantages that we've been talking about. You want to know what you'll be able to contribute in the future, right? So you can do some financial planning with your financial planner or your accountant or whoever you're using. You want to know how much to expect at retirement. You want to be able to build a financial plan and say, hey, we'd be great to have X dollars at age 55. But if you don't have any projections, you just, going into war without a plan is usually dangerous. If the time comes, the ability to add the spouse or children, and this is Dr. Tran, you've got your spouse, but your kids, when they get older, they could also potentially join the plan, right? And there's a lot more. a lot more. We just scratched the surface. It's late at night, people are tired. We can't get into all the excruciating detail, but it's a very, very, very powerful solution. So the best way is to visit our website and to speak with our facilitators and say, hey, I'd like an illustration. And then we'll take care of everything else. We'll gather the data, produce the report, talk to your accountant, talk to your financial advisors or whoever you're using to help you, financial planners, and then have an informed decision as to whether it's time to set this or maybe wait a year or not do it, depending on sort of what your preferences are. So I think that's the end of the formal slides. I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Tran, and we can open it up to questions.
Okay, thank you, JP. So just to come back, if you are interested and want to get an illustration, don't go through that. Go through Kevin. Just email Kevin. Say, Kevin, I want to connect with Dr. Tran, or I want to connect with JP, and I'm happy to explain everything. As a physician, even to understand this took me 5-6 sittings. It took me 6 times him explaining to me all this concept. And so I don't expect you to understand all this concept with an hour of information. So even before you do the illustration, you want more information, connect with Kevin and we'll connect together and we'll sit down and chat. And then after that, obviously do the illustration. And after the illustration, you can figure out whether it's for you or not. But I'll tell you this, I've done mine. And even before I've done mine, I looked at it and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to do my RSP anyways. I have to plan for my future. I have to save. So what do? I do like what everybody does. I contribute in an RSP. And when I realized, wait a minute, the RSP only gives me 1 tax benefit, whereas a pension gives me 7 tax benefit. If I'm going to put money in my RSP, I might as well put it in my pension. Why? Because there's 7 other tax benefits. And so at the end of the day, the pension gives me something that the RSP never will give me. If we understand the RSP is a defined contribution system. I put in 29,000 every year. It's defined how much I put in, 29,000. I put it in every year. And then based on what the market does, I have no clue what I'm going to get at the end. What is defined is the contribution, but I don't know what I'm going to get at the end. Whereas the pension works in reverse. It's a defined benefit. I know exactly how I'm going to get, how much I'm going to get at age 65. And then we work the math backwards. So from a retirement perspective, I feel more comfortable having something defined at the end. So you ask the teachers and you ask the nurses, are they stressed about their retirement? None of them are stressed about their retirement because they all know what they're going to get at retirement. You and I are always stressed. Now, I see a lot of young faces and we talked about how it's difficult in the first 5 years. And trust me, you guys are not thinking about your retirement, right? When you're at my age, you're thinking about retirement. And when you're thinking, well, how am I going to retire? I'm going to put my kids to university, etc. And then that's when I start to panic. But it's good to have something where you know you're going to fall on a safety net right from the get-go. And that's very important. And so I'm going to end the discussion. Sorry, I'm going to end the presentation here. We can leave it up to open in questions. But I want to first take the opportunity to thank Kevin. So Kevin Kirkpatrick, please come up and say a few words. How cool you are. So first of all, me and Kevin, we've known each other for many, many years. So Kevin is a good friend. So thank you very much, Kevin, for facilitating this and bringing us to Peterborough. There's a lot of good things about pensions that you're going to hear over time. Like I said, as physicians, we've never had pensions. So that's why when JP say, if you go to your accountant, they won't know, because pensions with physicians doesn't exist until now. And so accountants will not know about this. Only a few know about this because we have a few accountants that actually did their own PPP as well. And so if you understand the concept of this, this is not just for physicians. This is for anybody that has a corporation. So dentists, lawyers, accountants, engineers, physicians, we're all self-employed. We've never had an employer, and now we do. We have a a professional corporation that's our employer. And so that employer-employee relationship is extremely powerful for us because now pension is accessible to us where it was never before. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for having us here today. Thank you, Kevin, for having us.
We can close the recording.
Yeah, so thank you for those who are online as well. We're going to stop the recording. And then we're going to open up the questions to both the guests here and also to the guests online. So